what I try to do on good days. Like I go out and I do everything that I can to provide for my family. I've obviously worked my butt off with education, even with some limitations, and that's kind of just my philosophy in life. Is like, just, you're gonna regret things if you don't put your all into whatever you decide to do. So
yeah. Wow, man. So with that, I want to come back to that 30% because that's a low number.
it is, yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, we know I had it for at least 2 years, maybe longer. We don't know how long it was, but yeah, at least.
Yeah.
We actually think I think that I might have started getting it my senior year in high school because I get vertigo really bad in high school my senior year and headaches. And I think my parents, well, they did. They just thought I was trying to miss school and stuff because I was a pretty chill guy, and I think they just thought like
he's trying to get out of something.
He's just done. Like it's just,
Yeah.
because it wasn't normal to see a guy like in the shape that I was miss that much school. You know what I mean? With just weird stuff like headaches and.
Sure.
It was really actually a lot of headaches my senior
But it was
year.
that fitness level that actually increased your odds of making it.
Yeah,
right?
they actually told me that I probably wouldn't have been able to handle all that chemo, and so they gave me large amounts because they caught it so late. I had to have a specialist actually come down and oversee everything because it was such a rare type of tumor, and it had gotten so big. So yeah.
What's the official diagnosis? What is it called? I mean, brain tumor, but what is
germinoma brain tumor? So it's a form of actually testicular cancer, but it grows up in your brain. And so some signs of it are that like you mature a little bit, like you mature early, and I mean, it usually doesn't show up until you're at the ages of like 19 and 23 though. So it's something that like we weren't on the radar for, and it's something that's just shows up in some people, and some people it doesn't. So I actually stopped. I've always been a pretty good athlete, like I said, and I actually stopped growing in like the 7th grade. So I did mature really early, and I had sideburns, and I grew out these huge sideburns in high school because I thought it was really like to be goofy. I just thought it was funny, like spiky, like. But so those were things that actually looking back, it could be like, yeah, I had those things, but you know what I mean? Would you never?
But you don't relate that.
Just thought I was a hairy guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So, so after all of that, after the chemo, radiation. What did the recovery look like?
Oh man, it's never been the same. When I have bad days and I'm feeling really crappy and feeling down for myself, because I do get depressed every once in a while. I'm going to be honest. Like
we all do.
I almost thought like when I was done with chemo and radiation, like I did it, man, because I beat the odds. Like, does that make sense? Like I thought like my body would just get, like I always push hard, so I just thought like my body will just get back, like my mind will get back, and like that just never happened. But so it's living with the new normal, I guess, is what I'd say. But it's, so like I said, it's basically looked like a lot of headaches, a lot of vertigo still. And then like I said, my brain, it definitely affected my brain. And so what I'm trying to do now is just kind of learn where my weaknesses are, and so that I can still live a good life with the new normal, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is hard because it did change the course of my life. I'm not going to lie about that. Like when things came really easy to me and now it doesn't, that changes your life. So
yeah, for sure.
Plus health problems on top of it. So
for sure. So you mentioned family. What's so you ended up getting married afterwards, or
so I met my sophomore year in school. I met my wife, and we
high
have
school sweetheart.
Well, she wasn't. So
Not quite.
She's from my high school, but she was 3.5 years younger than me, so I actually didn't know her.
Okay.
But on Facebook, I put something like, "What makes a person awesome?" I actually remember this, and people just responded, a bunch of different people, and she responded. I guess I added her because we had a lot of mutual friends, and I just add a lot of people because I guess it's cool to have a lot of friends. And so she responded, and I just liked her comment. I responded back, and I was having a group over to do some things at the condo that I owned, and invited her to come over, and we kind of just hit things off, and I asked her on a date, and after our first date, actually, I just knew there was, like, I honestly thought she was the person I was going to marry. I never told her that, but like at that point, like it was just different. It just felt different, and she felt the same thing. And after our second date, like I knew that was the person I was going to marry, and we got married, and we got engaged in 3 months, married 3 months after that, and then not started having kids. We didn't know if we'd be able to have kids because of all the chemo and radiation I went through.
Yeah,
so
sure.
We weren't doing anything to prevent it, just kind of seeing if we could have kids.
Yeah.
So that was after you beat this cancer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we found out we could have kids because we had a kid when we weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
And then we actually had a surprise kid, which for our next kid, we weren't trying to have him and had him. So obviously we could have kids. And then some more crazy, like I said, my life, eventually I'm going to write a book. All my friends tell me I need to write a book just to say all the things I've gone through at a young age, but then overcome. So after our second, my wife started having really bad, with her second pregnancy, she had really bad scarring. I don't want to get too much in details because I don't want to embarrass her if someone sees this, but she had to have a wound vac, which, because the scarring was so bad for a little while. And then, so there was complications on her end, but our kids were both very functional and normal and actually are very high cognitively. So no problems there. But, our next, a while later, she had a miscarriage, which is obviously a hard thing. A lot of people have to go through that, but it's still super hard.
Sure.
And then,
it is.
A little less than a year later, we found out she was pregnant again, which we were super excited about, and things seemed to be going well. And then we went to one of her visits, and they said, they couldn't see the heart very well of our child, and so they kept just mentioning that. And then they had her come back, and it showed that that there was some problems with our child's heart, and he ended up being diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which essentially he was born with half a heart. And so we knew that was going to be, we didn't know what that would entail, but we knew that he'd have to be born at Primary Children's Hospital. He'd have to have heart surgery right after he was born. And it's just different for each kid. But we knew that even if he did make it, it was going to be, we'd have to support him, and we don't know exactly how his life would go and how long he'd live. The lifespan isn't super long usually for someone born with that, but there are definitely several kids that make it and are able to live into their early 20s or so. And so we were just kind of just hoping for the best. And I took a couple months off of work, and we just basically lived up in Salt Lake for a couple months. And he basically had, the heart surgery actually went really well, but he had basically every complication that you could get after that: seizures, clotting. He had a needle through his neck that he had to have an extra, like it just didn't go through, and it built up with fluid. And so he had to have surgery, and he almost didn't make it through the surgery. So they had to go back and do it again. They had to stop the surgery because he was basically almost didn't make it. And so they had to go back and do that again. And all those things really weakened him by going through all those things. And he could never be poked well. They had to have people come in to actually poke him that were specialists, because so anyways, he just had a lot of things. And even with that though, we still had hopes that we'd be able to at least take him home for a short little while. We knew that for the second, so they have to have a number of open heart surgeries and then heart transplants down the road. Like we didn't even know if he'd be eligible for the second open heart surgery because had so much complications and probably wasn't strong enough. So we knew that his lifespan wouldn't be too long, but he was actually having some really good days. And then they called us as we were heading in the morning. We usually left her pretty early in the morning, around 7 or so, not much earlier than that, because we had kids with us and it's hard to get them up that early. And so we were heading over, and they called us as we were heading over saying they were doing CPR on him after he had probably his 2 best days. So I really feel like that was, considering that he ended up passing that day, that God was giving us those 2 days with him to have, because normally his eyes weren't open a lot, but his eyes were basically open all day, and he was looking at us.
And all see you guys.
And all the doctors, like, this is what's really cool. So all the nurse, and this is why, and I'm a person that has faith, but this is me knowing, like, the nurses told us they'd never seen a boy that was so aware of his surroundings. Like when we were around him, he would open his eyes and he would just stare at it. Like you could tell he knew who we were. And those last 2 days too, like they said that he shouldn't have been doing that well, especially when he passed away the next day. So, and they don't know why he passed, but they do. We know he had a lot of weaknesses and complications, so they're thinking probably like an embolism or something, but it's as he had clotting issues and things like that. But we don't really know, but that's really not that important. We valued that time that we had with him, but that also has been another thing that's been not just hard on me, but like it's been more hard on my wife than anyone, because she blames herself, of course, which is super hard because there's nothing that she could have done. Doctor told, like, but I think that's just natural for.
It is. It's part of the grieving process. Yeah.
But that's affected not only that's affected a lot. That's affected our relationship as well as our kids. So I don't want to get too personal, but like when you go through so many hard things in a short period of time, that just affects your relationship, especially when you have kids. So we've been trying to push through, but we're both kind of just trying to push through some hard things. So
how fresh is it from? I mean, because you said you had 2 before, then a miscarriage, then this one. So
So we have a 5-year-old that just turned 6, August 6th.
Okay.
And then they're 14 months apart, our next boy. So he actually has a birthday here in August. He'll turn 5, or October, he'll turn 5. And then our baby just passed away just basically a year and 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And so it was his year mark, and for his year mark, we want to do something really special for him. And so we're talking with the kids, and they really wanted to build a treehouse and name it Fort Harrison. His name is Harrison. So
that's cool.
Me and my wife, when we do stuff, we kind of go all out. So we built a deck, not just a treehouse. It's like a deck treehouse with like the nice stuff, and built.
Wow.
I want to see that.
I do too. Yeah.
It's actually really cool. All the neighborhood kids will just stop in front of our house with their bikes and be like, we'll be like, go ask your parents if you want to come back. They'll go one way and then they'll come back. So then if they're coming back, we're like, okay, we'll acknowledge that they're, because they just stop and then we'll say, ask your parents, you can come back and play. But we've got a zip line, like a fire pole, like a rock wall, a mud kitchen. There's 3 levels to it. It's really cool. And my wife, this is because to her, like, she's really, really good at this stuff. And then I'm working, obviously. So, like, she's done the majority of it. I'd say I'm the muscle, and she's the one that's done most of it and organized it. So she's a lot better at that stuff.
That's awesome, because that's kind of how our last guest got his idea for Ainsley's Angels. Like, it was just, like, by chance, his sister said, let's make some T-shirts. And he didn't have time to make the T-shirts, and so he had his sister look into it, and they basically learned that if they were a nonprofit, they could do way more.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
Wow, man, you've been through a lot.
Yeah, and everyone tells me, like, and it's
you're still young.
Yeah, and everybody keeps telling me, you got to write a book, and I'm like, well, if I hadn't already written 2 70-page papers in my master's program, and if I wasn't working full time, and if I wasn't trying to just kind of survive right now, eventually I probably will, but right now it's just not in the books. But I do like, and I'm not afraid. I like to tell people my story, and I even told it a few times in public speaking classes in college and things like that, and in some papers, because, and it's not because I'm trying to say, like, look at me, look what I overcome, but I feel like in this life, like, it sucks. Like, I don't think it's fair that I've gone through the crap that I have, and I'll go out and tell people that, but, like, that won't help me have a good life. So I feel like no matter our circumstances, other people have had stuff that I haven't had, like born in broken homes or things like that. But at the end of the day, we have choices to go out and try to make our lives good.
And that's the important thing, to just keep fighting.
Yeah,
just keep punching.
I call it with my job. I'm actually... So my end goal is to be a district manager, and I'm actually looking to get a team around me. And what I tell people is, like, the people that are most successful at what I do, I work for a solar company, is not the people that are the smartest or the people that have the highest education. It's the people that are just willing to go out and work hard. Yeah. And so I feel like no matter what your weaknesses or strengths are, because obviously my brain, I've done my best, but obviously my brain's, and I've accomplished some good things. It's different than it was before the tumor. So I'm just trying to do my best. And I think I've always worked hard anyways, but I think I even work harder now than normal. And that's why I'm still able to be successful.
Yeah.
So what is, as of now, like, what's keeping you inspired daily to just keep pushing through?
I got to be honest. It's hard. And I'm going to be honest here too. Like, a lot of people don't see this because I don't just go around and, like, lay down outside or whatever. Like, when I'm around people, I'm very outgoing, and I'm an extrovert naturally. I'm just an outgoing person. But I have had moments where I just have to lay in bed and where I'm depressed. Like, it's just, I've had some sucky things. Like, but I think what keeps me going the most is just my family, because I've got a wife and kids, and my end goal is I want to be able to provide for them, and I want to have a nice house, and I want to be able to go places with them. And the main thing is I want to teach my kids that what we should do in our lives, no matter what challenges they have, that they can do whatever they want, and that they can, and the attitude that they need to have and the faith they need to have through hard things. And I think that's what keeps me going, because if it was just for myself, honestly, I think it would be harder, because I mean, there's harder things having kids, and there's harder things being single, but the main thing that keeps me going is wanting to be that good example for my kids.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's the, what creates the strongest mindset. It's you can learn by example also.
Yeah, sure. And the thing is even people listening can learn from your experience. And that's one of the reasons why we do this, is because other people can learn from this experience. So if they go through something hard, even if it's not